So I'm going to bounce around just a little bit. I'm going to start on 9.1, lunch trays. This is my favorite thing on the agenda today.
Oh, it is.
It is. And Marjorie Leary wrote a letter to the school committee, which I have here. And Marjorie, you're here. How are you? Good. Do you have your letter?
Yes, I do.
Do you mind reading it?
Sure.
Do you want to stand up and read it?
Thank you, Marjorie.
I think that the school should change their lunchtime basically. The styrofoam trays we are using are terrible for the environment, atmosphere, and for our health. I'm writing to you in hopes you can help me stop the use of styrofoam trays in our school. Why do I think the school should stop using styrofoam trays? Styrofoam trays are remarkably bad for the environment. They don't degrade over time, so that means that one little styrofoam tray will still be here in 100,000 years, and our lunchroom is adding hundreds each month. Styrofoam pollutes water, and if they don't reach a trash can, definitely count as litter. Styrofoam trays also can harm animals. In fact, big chunks of this material that has not yet become smaller can cause animals to choke if they eat it. This can seriously harm wildlife. Did you know that chemicals given off by the making of styrofoam pollutes the air? Styrene is also involved in styrofoam, and it is a harmful chemical. Styrene has ways of evaporating its fumes into the air, which is bad for our lungs and very bad for our skin. It is even toxic to create styrofoam. This chemical is a major contributor to greenhouse gases and global warming. Styrofoam trays are also terrible for our health. The people who work in styrofoam facilities usually are not very healthy because of the gases given off by its creation. Also, styrofoam can leach into food or drinks, typically with hot foods and drinks, but it can certainly get into cold meals. This is also very bad for our health. So what can we do instead? There are many alternatives to styrofoam trays. For example, you could use sugar cane lunch trays. Sugar cane lunch trays are biodegradable. They also have no harmful chemicals in them. They cost $62.23 for a case of 500 from the website I saw, but maybe there is a cheaper option. Another option to styrofoam trays are to use reusable trays and a dishwasher, which would, in the end, save us money. I know it is expensive at first, but I could do a fundraiser or sell something as a fundraiser or get donations. So we could either use reusable trays or recyclable biodegradable trays. Why should Governor Mcmahan join in the movement? Did you know that to date, countless schools, cities, and facilities across the country are banning styrofoam? Maine entirely banned any polystyrene food containers. Connecticut's schools have banned all styrofoam lunch trays. All of New York's public school facilities have banned styrofoam lunch trays. Even Dunkin' Donuts banned all styrofoam cups and replaced them with responsibly sourced paper cups. Now even McDonald's has stopped using styrofoam. These are only a few of the countrywide movement to ban styrofoam. Join the movement and get rid of styrofoam trays.
So good.
Thank
so good.
you.
Marjorie's in 5th grade, if anybody was wondering. So Marjorie, let's talk business. So, do you know how many trays that Wilbur uses in a year? It's 20,000 styrofoam trays. Just to go back, we don't have a dishwasher to clean them. So we use styrofoam trays. So there's 20,000 and they're 8 cents a piece. So that's $1,600. So what you put in your report here is the sugar canes are $62.23 for 500 of them. So 500 into 20,000 is 40. So 40 times 62.33 is $2,493.20. A difference of $893 for us to get rid of styrofoam here. So one way to do that is what you're doing right now is bring it to the attention of this committee and to see if they think like-minded like you. And we have budget season coming up, and we can just put that in the budget if 3 out of these 5 members decide it's important enough. So I want to commend you on bringing that to our attention. I certainly am in favor of it. I would vote for another $893 of the sugar cane. And obviously, if we can find other places to get it cheaper, or then certainly we will. I can't speak for the other 4 people here. Superintendent, I know that you've done a lot of research on this, and would you like to add anything?
Well, I think the bean counter came up with a lot of the a lot of that info, but I have reached out to Chartwell's and to our staff here at Wilbur Mcmahan, as you have too. You've spoken to them as well about the dishwasher situation. And also, I've reached out to Linda Benedetti. We enter into our contract with Chartwells, which is part of a huge multinational corporation, Compass, and we contract with them with 5 other districts, and a few of the other districts are interested as well. Tiverton High School is making the push. The kids there are very much environmentally conscious, and just like our own Greta Thunberg right here. And so it may just happen sooner than you expected, and than the rest of us expected. So there is a movement, and thank you for bringing it to Wilbur Mcmahan.
Any discussion from the committee?
Now, I would just like
Go
to
ahead.
really commend you for that letter. I thought it was from a parent. I didn't know it was from a student. And we need to work so hard to change what's going on with our climate, and it just makes me really so proud that you took that step. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else want to say something? Go ahead.
I have a question. Do we currently do any composting here? Do you know?
I don't think so. Well, we throw away we have recycling bins in the classrooms.
Yep.
But we throw away the styrofoam trays for the
Right.
Right. How about lunch scraps or anything like that?
No.
Is that no?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Marjorie. Appreciate it.
So much. Thank you.
So I'm going to bounce around again. I'm going to go to Spotlight on Excellence. I'm going to go 8th grade trip to Buck Hill. This was just as important as the styrofoam, just so you know, Buck Hill people. But I've heard the Buck Hill trip a few times, and I know this one will be different.
I promise.
All right.
They want to step with.
Well, this one was in November. They're usually the end of September, but the Triple E threat,
Look how big they are now. I can sell it. Yeah.
yes, they're tall.
It's all. This is big.
All right, here we are. Buck Hill, 44 years. This is the 44th Buck Hill camping
Wow.
trip. Tom Fennessy started this trip 44 years ago, and this is my 22nd year. And Mrs. Fitzgerald went on the first Buck Hill camping trip, and she actually came out with us this year. So it was kind of cool. But the trip itself is pretty much about survival. Survival in the elements, with your classmates, being around us teachers, surviving the activities. And I will tell you that the trip was supposed to take place in the middle of September, and then it got pushed to the end of October. And I think these guys were like, it's never going to happen. And then so we said, okay, let's do it the 18th, 19th, and 20th of November. By then we should have frost and Triple E should be over. And it did, and it just so happened that the temperatures plummeted. And so the weather we had kind of like today without the snow was around 34 degrees, and it was real kind of miserable. But these kids right here and the rest of their classmates rose to the occasion. They were, I think they might have been a little bit timid the weeks leading up to it. I kept telling them, no, you're going to be fine, it's going to be fine. And they believed in myself and the other chaperones that were going. So like once we got out there, they just worked as a team. Every activity we did, setting up tents, you name it, like cooking food. It was cold, but these kids were great and they persevered. I don't know if this trip should be done third week in November, but it definitely added a certain element by doing it this late. And I think the warm food helped a little too, right? Anyhow, look, real quick, I have to do some thank yous, but I'd like you guys to talk to them, because this is their experience. I've done this a lot of times. But real quick, we had Mr. Ken Heilman in his first year teaching at our school. I said, Mr. Heilman, will you come out with us? He said, I will be out there 110%. And so I'm like, you're in. And he brought an element to this trip that hadn't been there for a long time, like teaching orienteering. His experiences in another field he brought to this trip, and the kids got to see him in a different element. Thank you, Mr. Heilman.
Thank you so much.
Then we have Mrs. Miller. Elizabeth Miller was in her second year. Now, I think she's a camper, although she kept saying she wasn't. But she came out here. And she brought an element that, again, we hadn't had on this trip. And we got to learn more about ourselves while we were doing activities and after we did activities. And it really made this whole trip sort of become like full circle. And again, without someone like that, this trip wouldn't have been possible. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. So now we get to like Mrs. Whip, okay? So, 2 years ago, she came out, I think for an afternoon, to check out what was going on. She helped make beef stew. She let the kids read poems and stuff. And she kind of said, okay, this is really cool. And then last year she came out, and she got a chance to spend the night and really see how the whole formality of everything goes through. Well, this trip in particular, she was out on a training, the IB training. I think she flew in. She trusted her husband to bring all her backpack gear to sleep out in the woods for the 2 nights, and she just came right from being away. And she jumped right in. That kind of support, like, is incredible. And to have these kids see, like, the principal of their school be out there with them and working side by side, it was incredible. Thank you, Mrs. Whip. Lastly, there's a gentleman in this audience that doesn't really like publicity or doesn't like to stand out.
He's in there. Yeah.
I believe it was 7 years ago. 7? 8 or 8? 7 or 8. We lose track. 7 or 8 years ago, his oldest son was in 8th grade, and I had another gentleman that was helping me with the trip and could not make it. So this gentleman, Micah Shapiro, said, you know what, I'll give you a hand. So, like, we've probably seen this show, MacGyver, or you've seen these kind of people that can make anything happen. And so, like, while my arms are moving like this back and forth, talking to the kids, Mike is behind the scenes, getting all the activities set up for the next event. It's that kind of dedication over the last 7 or 8 years from a parent that doesn't even have a kid in the class. But he wants to see these guys perform those same activities that he's seen classes do over the years. That's a really special thing, and I will tell you that this trip wouldn't have existed over the last 7 years if Mr. Shapiro didn't come. So thank you. Other than that, you parents for signing the permission slips and letting them know, thank you. We did the best we could to take care of them. But if you guys have a moment, if you could maybe ask them a question or two. Kate was hiding, but you can ask her a question.
I have a question for Stella. Stella, what did you like best about the Buck Hill trip?
Probably the orienteering.
Yes.
What was so good about that?
Seeing a different side of Mr. Holland was like I really enjoyed it personally. Because we always see him in the classroom, but like we're always just learning, but this was a different side of learning.
This is the orienteering group right here. One of the groups.
How about the Harrington boy? What did you like most about it?
I really liked just sitting around the fire. That was really nice, and just talking as a group, because that was really the only time that we had to get together as a whole group, and it was really interesting.
That's neat. And the other person I know there, and she knows I know her, is the Gallagher girl. And what did you like most about it?
Probably just like the camaraderie between everybody. You know, everybody was willing to help each other out, and was willing to take some of their time and help you, with your stool or whatever you needed.
Would you tell them about the stools?
Oh, I mean, it was a little chilly, so get your hand warmers out, but it was definitely, yes.
The LCEF funded the purchasing the kits to make these footstools. Each child got to make a stool. It was over 2 days that they made them. Did you find it challenging?
Yes.
So here's some samples of finished products.
Nice.
Very happy with their stools.
Someone said.
Yeah. I mean, literally, they're doing it at dusk. You can barely see what they're doing, right?
It's like your wife.
There's a group shot.
It's a good one. How about a quick comment from Mr. Heilman? Did I say that right?
Yes.
What was your experience as a first timer?
Well, I'd really like to see the kids get out there outside of their comfort zone in the woods. I'm a big proponent of getting outdoors, and for them to understand once they get out there, they can actually meet that challenge of that cold, drizzly, 34, 35-degree weather and be just fine. They can pitch a tent properly and actually dry the ground beneath them over the course of a couple days. I don't think any one of them would push the I believe button up to that point. And so just by doing and being out there, I think it builds a lot of self-confidence for our students.
Any other questions from the committee? So just in closing, I would just like to again point out Micah Shapiro, really a special community member to do that without having a kid, and he's done that. And it really says something about the town. You know, it makes you really feel good about it. So thank you, Micah, for doing that. You really can't say enough. And Mr. DeLeo, so 22 years that you've done this. So you've seen 22 years of principals.
Yes,
And they've all been perfect for you, I probably imagine.
absolutely.
And you've had 22 years as superintendents,
Yes,
and awesome probably, right?
incredible.
Yeah. And 22 years of school committees who have been
Yes.
nothing but supportive and giving you everything you needed, right?
Correct again.
And I'm sure the parents in 22 years have been absolutely outstanding for you and helped you and did everything for all the kids.
Just going to cue the parents, the school committee, the administration that we've had. It seems like every year they pull together and they let us do it again.
And lastly, the kids you've had for 22 years, I'm sure they've been excellent behavior, never back-talked you, and it was wonderful for you for 22 straight years, am I right?
I've slept like a baby.
I mean, imagine you have. So I want to commend you on 22 years of bringing these kids up there, bringing them back safely, teaching them something about life. It's just special, and it happens here in this community. And you should be commended for that, so thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Fantastic.
So I want to move on my hopscotch here to 5.1, I already did 5.1, sorry. 5.3, International Baccalaureate Update. Something I'm very excited about. And if I have an audience here, I want them to hear it. So go right ahead. Kelly Cole, our leader. One of our leaders.
Hello everyone, once again I'm Kelly Cole. Sonia Whip and I had the pleasure of heading down to North Carolina in November to learn about the International Baccalaureate Program. I have to admit I'm very, very excited, even though I was beforehand. Afterward, I'm even more excited now. We saw things from different perspectives. When you go down there and you actually talk with other people who have been doing IB for 20, 30, 40 years, you really get a perspective that you just simply didn't have before you went. So let's dive right into it. And Sonia, you can obviously hop in.
This is just the overview slide that talks about the whole program. It's very student-centered, and the IB learning profile is at the center. Kelly will address that in a minute. The next ring is about approaches to teaching, which are just the methodology of how to get curriculum delivered. The middle years program involves a community service component that students are asked to do. The next ring is just the various elements of the curriculum which align with what we teach here at Wilbur. And those are just the elements that make up the IB program. And it's very global centric.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for anyone who doesn't know what IB is, we put this in here, I'd like to read it for you. The IB is a global academic program that encourages students to learn more than curricula by providing an education focused on inquiry, critical thinking, independence, and life skills, and the mission is to create a better world through education. So when we went down there, first of all, what we did was something called a Category 1 workshop. There's Category 1, 2, and 3. And Category 1 is sort of the stepping stone, the first stone that you would take, you would flip over to learn about IB. So when we went down there, to be honest, I knew some of this information, but it was just to clarify. It's to clarify what IB is all about, what we're actually going to be getting into here at the Woodland Mcmahan School, and specifically, what does an IB student look like? And so this is the profile of an IB student. This is straight from IB. Students will be able to think independently, they drive their own learning, become more culturally aware, be able to engage with people, and respect themselves and others around them. So that sort of encompasses the whole child, okay? This right here is a little bit more specific. You can actually see that there are tiers here of the things that what each child is going to be, the profile that they represent, the 10 attributes that they will have. We can actually, I think Sonia can put it in, yep. So here's something a little bit more clear for you, and Sonia, you can.
What we'll do is we'll post this online because it's a good overview, so we won't necessarily read every one, but these are the 10 components that they're looking for in an IB learner. So it's being inquirers, knowledgeable, thinkers, communicators. Yes. They're principled, open-minded, caring, risk takers, balanced, and reflective. So all of those are traits that we really want in all learners. So it really fits in nicely, and there was nothing that was like, ooh, we don't do that, we need to add that. It really, these elements are already embedded in our practice every day.
Absolutely. One of the most interesting parts to me is this idea that IB has these approaches to learning. They're actually called ATLs. I think both Sonia and I, when we went down there, we did not know what an ATL was. We have learned since that in IB, what they're doing is they're developing ways to teach students, they're learning how to learn, right? So there's these 146 attributes that children will have by the time that they graduate from this IB program that are discipline-based skills. We added here something that, it's sort of the umbrella of what these skills would actually look like. Like I said, there's 146 or 148 skills that each student will have by the time they finish this IB program. And as you can see, it starts off top here. Let's even just look at this left-hand column here, thinking skills. So each teacher is responsible for teaching these skills, these thinking skills, that will gradually turn into critical thinking. Are they critical thinkers? Toward creative thinking, and then do they transfer it out into the world? Do they transfer it into their lives? Another one that we looked at was the self-management skills. Are they organized? Do they know what organization means? Do they know what organization looks like? I think it's very important for a middle school student to be learning this and then having these effective skills and reflecting upon them. We do this in our middle school curriculum now, but I think this has more of a focus. So every single day in every single class, we would be focusing on these attributes. Did you want to add to that?
Nope, that's...
So for anyone who doesn't know what the middle years program is, it's called the MYP curriculum. This is the framework. Sonia kind of mentioned at the beginning, there are 8 subject groups that we will demonstrate on that next slide. By the time IB students go through 5th through 8th grade here at Woodland Mcmahan School, they will be provided with at least 50 hours of teaching time for each of these subject groups. Notice that we put in each program year, that doesn't necessarily mean 5th grade, just in 5th grade. A program year could be 5th and 6th grade together. So you could have potentially, in the 5th through 8th grade, you could have potentially 3 IB program years. So there'll be 50 hours of teaching for each of these subject groups that we have here. So language acquisition would be something that I would teach as a foreign language teacher. Here are some, this is a guide Each teacher is going to be receiving one of these guides. They can actually, when we present this to our teachers, they can actually click here. It's lengthy. It's probably about 20 to 30 pages long, but it actually guides you along the way, lets you know what that looks like, digs in deeper. There's language and literature. I would say that that's ELA at the moment. And we have individuals and societies, better known right now as social studies. We have mathematics. The next subject group would be the sciences, physical and health education, design. Did you want to talk about the design part?
Yeah, design is really about applied learning. Design will be integrated within sciences, art. It really can be in several different areas where design elements will come into play. So it will be integrated within various disciplines. And one of the things that has to happen also is that there are areas where two disciplines need to work together. So here, that seamlessly would happen in ELA and social studies, but design would also be integrated with other subjects.
Right. So those 50 hours of that design subject could be or will be embedded into, let's say, language acquisition or possibly the sciences or mathematics. The arts. And then finally, this is our timeline that we put together. 2017 to 2019, something we already did. The stakeholders have visited an IB school down in Provincetown. Sonia and I are going through the exploration of the program into 2019, where you see here, IB coordinator and principal participated in that head of school training. We are doing the application process as we speak. Sonia and I are hoping to submit that by January 2020. It is pretty lengthy, and so the process is that we will be submitting that, and then there's an editing process. So they will probably be coming back within the next, probably in January, February, March. We will do some edits, and then we will go into what's called the candidacy phase if we continue. January 2020, and then the beginning of the process of training our staff. So as I said, training staff consists of workshops. Those workshops, as I said, were categories 1, 2, and 3. Teachers can travel. There are workshops all over the world. We can actually invite someone from IB to come in and to actually deliver that workshop. There are online tools that you can have to participate in the workshops. And those online workshops consist of 14 hours of professional development that would occur in, they give you a 1-month timeline. So there are various ways that teachers will be able to partake in the workshops. If you wanted to continue with 2021.
Through the 2020 and I'm tired of years. 2020 and 2021 will be beginning to train our staff, and then beginning to work on the curriculum alignment pieces. And by the 21-22 school year, we would be looking at a more formal implementation with down the road. IB has to approve the program that we put into place, and has to accredit or give us their okay, their seal of approval, which there's a process where they come in and do site visits and determine whether we meet the criteria of being an IB school.
That's right. That would be the end of our site. One of the greatest pieces that I actually took away from it, that this is an ongoing process. They work with us very, very closely. Sonia and I have already been in touch with many people in IB down in Bethesda, Maryland. They are extremely helpful. They are helping us along the way, and we feel confident that when we submit, possibly that we won't even have to edit all that much, because they are helping us so much at the moment. So we're on our way.
Thanks, Kelly. Kelly, do you know any of the history of the IB?
So they did go over a little.
It started in the 60s.
It has, I was just going to say,
Right.
It's been around for about 60 years.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No.
No, so, and there were schools that actually participated down in North Carolina who actually started it when it started back in, I believe it was 1962. So like I said before, we actually were able to speak with those schools and teachers from those schools, and having their input and seeing the progress that their school has made over the years was tremendous. It was great to actually get the feedback from those teachers.
So Kelly, you went to Provincetown on one of the trips, right?
I went to Provincetown, yes.
And we had 3 trips? 3?
Yes.
Yes, yep.
What were your impressions when you went down there?
So, first of all, the staff is extremely welcoming. Everyone that we spoke with was extremely positive. The students and the actual engagement from the students was unbelievable. When we talk about that community project, when we were down there, it was in June, and they were finishing up that community project. The students actually were able to present at that point, and the way that they were giving back to their community and actually talking about giving back to their community, they were in it. You could tell that this exploration was going to continue with them into high school and beyond. And when we talk about, globalizing our students, I could see that in those Provincetown kids.
So you mentioned that, I had that written down. These kids are going to be in college soon, and I have a boy in college and one is a junior, and it happens like that. So when colleges look at kids that have been through the IB program, I mean, that's good. I mean, they're going to look at that as something that's positive. And I think parents in Little Compton need to realize what a great opportunity this is and what a big deal this is. Because the kids, it's a flash. And next thing you know, they're applying for colleges, and this is a big deal. It will be the first Rhode Island middle school to have the IB program. It will be number 1, the first one, which is important. And just quickly, someone on the committee, Polly went, Jana, did you go?
Yep.
And Rita, did you go?
Yep,
You just
absolutely.
quickly, Superintendent, I know you went. You tell the folks what you thought about it.
Yeah, I will. I went and I was skeptical. I'm an lifelong educator, and I wondered if this was, another thing. And I was blown away, mainly by the kids. They were so engaged. They had such ownership over not just their educational process, but their school. This was their place, and they were so excited to show us what they were doing. I was really, really impressed.
I would agree with Jana and everybody else. The environment gave you the feel, the messaging all around the building. So not just the teachers and the staff, but also the feel and the students as well. So you really got a solid feeling like this place means it. And I just wanted to ask, it seems to me, I see there's significant training for staff, and that's going to be important because we're not only changing curriculum, but we're really shifting the culture, which is a big shift. So I'm wondering, are the teachers being brought into the conversation now so they realize what's coming, and are you sharing all of this with them?
Yes, I did just want to say that the curriculum isn't changing necessarily. They can still use the same curriculum. I think that's important to understand. So the Engage New York that the middle school teachers are using right now, they will still use that. It's the IB principles are going to be brought into that. And so with the workshops, yes, we have been talking about it for the past couple of weeks, trying to see the interest from the teachers, if they are able to go. We understand that with the travel, it can be tricky, but we are in communication with them. We're trying to finalize something right at the moment to try to get our first group going. The other thing about those workshops is that if someone is traveling and you're actually getting those face-to-face workshops, everyone isn't going to necessarily be able to go because they hone in on certain subject areas. So at the moment, the one that is for New England at the moment is just for our ELA and science teachers. So it's not like everyone can go at the same time, but we have made those teachers aware that there are opportunities, and this will be an ongoing process.
Sure, great. Even if you could use technology and say bring them in via Skype or some other method, because I think the more brought into the conversation early, the better buy-in you will have, and I really believe in this program.
I agree. Like I said, before we went, that Category 1 workshop, we didn't know everything that we learned, right? So that's what we're hoping to get teachers into. We want to get them into that face-to-face communication with the leaders so they can actually learn about IB. That's what Category 1 is. Category 2 and 3, you're actually going to be getting into specific subject content area. Category 3 even is having to do with diversity and inclusivity and things like that. So that's, you know, something down the line. But at the moment, we're looking at those Category 1 workshops for our teachers.
Beautiful, thank you.
Polly, do you want to say something quick?
Sure. I went on, I think, the first trip. Is that the trip you were on?
I'm not
Because
sure
they
what
had
number.
projects, that's why they presented
Yes.
their projects to us. The excitement in the kids actually wanted to be in school, they wanted to learn, they were excited about showing us what they learned, and it was an entire class, so it wasn't like they picked, you know, the model kids or the kids that were going to put on the best show. We went into an entire class and everybody was excited, and the whole staff was excited too. Like, the IT person was there, super excited about the program, and she had engaged with some kids that needed some other help and created a Minecraft room where they could do math inside a Minecraft room. It was an entire school experience where everybody was excited about the kids learning.
I do have to say too, there were approximately 300 people at this workshop or so, 200, 300, and there were some from Rhode Island who were just coming to see what it was all about. So there is interest out there. You know, this is happening all across the United States at the moment, and it's getting bigger and bigger.
Superintendent, you want to quickly say something about this?
Well,
About,
the first thing that a superintendent and a business manager think about is cost. And I did just tell John, as an aside, I did integrate the IB training into our federal grants, into the CRP, and we've had full approval. So $750 per teacher in the middle school. That's academic and co-curriculars. So about $15,000 change, not coming from local, not coming from our operating budget. So that's one piece. We also have 10 tuition students, so that gives us another funding source for those pieces of training that the federal grant will not pay for. The federal grant pays workshop fees. So we have found a way to sort of integrate it into all of our processes, including financial. And we were there 2 days before the end of the school year in June. So the kids had 48 hours of the school year, and they were highly engaged, and it was infectious. And the teachers were energized, and it, like Jana, I thought I would be underwhelmed. Okay, this is the new flavor in public schools. And I went last year alone on my sort of fact-finding trip, fall of 2018. I was blown away. In use your words, I was blown away. It's just the level of engagement. It's a wonderful fit for this school and for this community.
thank you. Everyone that we've sent down there has just come back and said that. It's an exciting time for Little Compton, and I hope it works out. And thank you, Kelly. I'll just say one quick thing about Kelly Cole. She's got inducted into the Tiverton Athletic Hall of Fame
Yes.
a couple of weeks ago. And you're like, what, some triathlete or something, aren't you?
Jeez.
Like,
Field time.
thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And I was Kelly's librarian when she was
Wow.
for 4 years of
Okay, so I'm going to jump around. We're going to go to, I'll ask the people that signed up: Jenna Magnuski, Kristen Aguiar, and Peter Coward. We have under discussion item 9.2 on your agenda, diversity education at Wilbur School. So I'm happy to have that discussion with Ray Marcotte and Mary Elizabeth, superintendent, and the committee, and then we can take your public input, or you folks can give your 3 minutes, and then we can have that discussion, and then we can continue to discuss, and you can talk some more about it. So you can decide. Does anyone want to speak now? I'll do public input right now. I've got a hand. I've got two hands.
She needs to go first and then I'll go second.
All right. And what's your name?
My name is Jenna Magnuski.
Hi, Jenna.
Hi.
So Jenna, let me just say, It's 3 minutes, and I've never held a clock for any 3 minutes, and we always go over. So if you see me go like this, it's like the 8-9 minute stage, and then you see me do one of these. It's like a 10-11, and then it's you gotta go.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
So my name is Jenna Magnuski. I have a preschooler and a first grader here at Woodland Mcmahan. I also hold a master's degree in education, which focused on collegiate student development. My work included creating inclusive, educationally focused environments. It also included addressing bias-related incidents or potential hate crimes. And my perspective on this issue is also firmly rooted in my study of history as a graduate student. The school committee is aware of my previous correspondence, that is the word, which discuss specific actions of students. So I'm going to address you assuming that you have read all of those comments. According to the United States Department of Education, discussing an example of repeated race-based harassment, quote, "The nature of the harassment, the number of incidents, and the students' safety concerns demonstrate that there was a racially hostile environment that interfered with the students' ability to participate in the school's education programs and activities." Regarding another example, it specifies that, quote, "The fact that school officials considered one of the incidents teasing is irrelevant for determining whether or not it contributed to a hostile environment." Based upon these descriptions, it is clear to me that Wilbur McMahon has unfortunately developed a racially hostile environment. If we step up and accept that this environment exists, we must act bravely, boldly, and perhaps most importantly, broadly. In the previously referenced example, the U.S. Department of Education says that, quote, "The school failed to meet its obligation to implement a more systemic response to address the unique effect that the misconduct had on the school climate." Further, quote, "Because the school failed to recognize that the incidents created a hostile environment, it addressed each only in isolation, and therefore failed to take prompt and effective steps reasonably calculated to end the harassment and to prevent its recurrence." And that is what I'm here to request. Given a systemic school climate issue, we require a systemic intervention. For the students of color who endure racial hostility, we must strive to give them a safe environment. Without the basic assurance of safety, no learning can occur. For the 97% of Wilbur McMahon students who are white, we must prepare them for the world beyond Little Compton that is 60.4% white. For them to leave our halls without cultural competence is a grave dereliction of our shared mission, as parents and educators. Further, that education must start young. Researchers at Northwestern University recently found evidence of racial bias in preschool-age children. All of our children, regardless of their skin color, desperately need the lesson that people are different and worthy of dignity and respect. They need the lesson that our past holds terror in the form of lynching, imprisonment, and exclusion, all of which are invoked by slurs and pejoratives, but that it need not be our future. Teaching them this is not cause for anxiety or for shame. By acting, we are showing these students that, like Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, W.E.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King Jr., Shirley Chisholm, and countless others that came before and since, we have the power and obligation to make this world a more humane one for ourselves and for each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you.
So Jenna, there's two things that I got out of that.
Yes.
I think we're going to discuss as we go on. One was that you want a system of intervention,
Yes.
and one was how we're going to prepare students beyond Little Compton. Okay, so we're going to, as we continue this discussion, we're going to make sure we get you those answers tonight. So thank you. Did I see another hand? Is that Christine?
Christine, yes.
Christine Aguirre. So Christine, your mom is who?
My name is Christine Gagnon Aguirre. I am a fourth generation Little Compton native. My children, who are sitting over there, are fifth generation Little Compton natives. They are second graders here at Wilbur School. My grandfather my maternal grandparents were Goularts and Rogers. So we're talking Folksel and Franlart and farming. My blood here runs deep, and I care deeply about this community.
So your mom.
I am a mom.
So your mom was my third grade teacher.
Yes, she was, I'm sure.
and one of my favorite teachers.
Did she play the guitar for you?
She played the guitar. you let me bring my cat in?
Oh my gosh, I'm totally gonna have to
Bring my
ask her about
cat
that.
in? Anybody else have Mrs. Goulart here?
Were you there for
You had, did
her
you bring your
wedding?
cat in?
Was that you guys?
Bring your cat.
Were you there for her wedding to my dad?
No, it's funny because
Was that before that?
someone, Margie O'Toole, talked
Marjorie
about
was
that, and I don't think I was invited to that, but
In Marjorie's class?
I was
Because if
invited.
you were invited.
No, I was. It's okay. Maybe, there was two.
Marjorie like dressed up.
There was two, there was a 3-1 and a 3-2.
You weren't in Ms. Goulart's class.
Well, I was in the school arts class. That's something we'll discuss.
All right, well, we'll have to invite you for Christmas to make up for it. There's still a whole bunch of crazies that are there. Farm party, maybe. We still do that. So all joking aside, Jenna addressed that we have a problem here in Little Compton, in the school and in the town, but we can only really address what is going on in the school. I can speak from my experience, which is a long time ago, but I did not receive any diversity education here at Wilbur School. I don't think that I talked to a person of color until I was 13. And in that 8th grade year, it was like the tables have turned for our children of color here at Wilbur School. Because I was in a class, my mom got a new job, started teaching outside, and I was one white student out of 16. And that was enough of an experience to give me pause to take that with me for the rest of my life, to make sure that I am attempting to make a difference in not making any child feel isolated. So I have taught for my entire adult life. I started when I was in my late teens helping my mom teach future problem solving. I don't know if any of you guys here remember that. It's sort of a lot like IB. You identify problems and then you try and solve them in a futuristic setting in that instance. So I started coaching that when I was in my late teens with my mom. By the time that I was 21, I was the director of the Rhode Island program. Since then, I have taught everywhere from the inner city in Central Falls. I was teaching 4-year-olds there. And I have obviously taught all the way up through those 17-year-olds that I was teaching at the Wheeler School. So very different environments, very different children. And what I have taken from that in my education perspective is that you can't teach everybody the same way at the same time. So there's one. We can't give everybody the same book and say, here kindergarten, here 8th grade, you must learn racism and cultural diversity from this same book. That won't work. The second thing is that because I am not aware of any cultural diversity or racism education here, I am left to surmise that we don't have any. Somebody can correct me, and that's totally fine. That's not a problem, it's a challenge. So I propose that 5 times a year, we have some sort of cultural diversity education, both in the classroom and as a group. So the way that it works in my mind is once a year, we have a large-scale assembly, kind of like what we did have already with the middle schoolers. But obviously the people who are here know that the kindergartners can't attend, the 3rd graders couldn't attend that meeting because it wasn't brought down to their level. There are people who do that level. I'm doing research. I've spoken to Rhode Island for Community and Justice, this group out of Providence that works with diversity education. I have a meeting with them next Tuesday on how they implement things in their school. So I think that I would like to suggest that we form a committee or put it under the Wellness Committee in which people who are qualified can help the school and help the students learn. So we have that one large-scale assembly. And then 4 times a year, we have something within the classrooms. Now, I'm not trying to make more work for the classroom teachers. The committee, me being on it, I will be very happy to come up with lesson plans and either find volunteers to come in and teach with the classroom teacher present, or get your guys' approval on what it is this diversity education is, give the teacher the lesson plan. Okay, we do this quarterly. So now, in this way, we have 5 times a year that the students here at Wilbur School are hearing, we are inclusive, we are diverse. This world does not look like this room does. We need to treat everyone with empathy, and we need to live in a community peacefully. So by the time that, say we get this started for the next school year, Jenna has a son who's entering kindergarten. So the children entering kindergarten, by the time they graduate, will have heard 45 times that we are members of a multicultural society in this world. We will have heard 45 times we do not use this language, or it is inappropriate to use this language. We will have heard 45 times that regardless of your skin color, your race, your religion, you are worthy of that empathy. And I don't know, it might not solve the racism problem, or it might not solve any inclusion problem that any school would have, but it might give them pause. And if it might give them pause, I feel like it's worth a shot, because I'm only asking for about 4 hours of classroom time per class, and possibly 1.5 hours, however long, maybe the 1 hour, maybe it's just 5 hours, between 4 and 6 hours a year of classroom time or school time be devoted to that diversity education. It sounds like with IB, it's already encoded into that. But for the little guys, we need to get down onto their level. And then with IB, you seem to be able to have the curriculum that you design, and then, or the school has, and you're already implementing those methods within those.
Approaches to learning.
So, let's do that. Let's do this. Let's give these kids 45 inoculations against developing hatred for anything. So I just ask that you guys take a few moments, think about that. That is one solution out of possibly many. Jenna and I are here to represent a growing group of parents who want to help. We don't want to shame anything that has happened. We don't want to say people have done something wrong. We have a problem, let's work to fix it, and let's work together. Thank you.
All right, Kristen, thanks. So I got that, you want to teach you can't teach every kid the same way. Mm-hmm. And you want some more cultural diversity here in the forms of a classroom or assembly, form a committee 5 times a year. But, something you said that's true. This room does not look like the world. It's true. It's a true statement. That was pretty good, so thanks for saying that. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think that we're all doing the right thing here. We're all trying to open a dialogue, and we're all trying to address that. So thank you for your time.
I have Peter Coward. Do you want to speak now, or would you like to wait?
I might as well speak now.
Sure.
This is the first time I felt compelled to come to a meeting. I know what you folks do up there is kind of a thankless job sometimes, most of the time probably. But, I've had 2 children here at Wilbur Mcmahan School. One that graduated last year, one that's in 7th grade now. I had no idea we lived in such a racist town. And I'm saying that sarcastically. Lived here 8 years. There are wonderful people here. Yes, we don't look like the inner city in Fall River or in Central Falls, but they don't look like us either. We live in a diverse society. If kids are doing things they shouldn't be doing, that certainly needs to be addressed. But the premise that we live in a completely racist town, which is what I've heard tonight from the previous 2 speakers, in my opinion, couldn't be further from the truth. The training that went on last week, the main reason I'm here, I got that email at 7:08 last Wednesday night to let me know at 9 o'clock in the morning that training was going to be happening. My daughter didn't go to school that day because I felt it just was a bad look. It seemed like it was very, looked like you were trying to hide something. Not having kind of a last minute notification that that was going to happen. My greater concern, and I've talked to the superintendent about this, is when these trainings happen, kids aren't in school. Kids aren't in class, rather. I've had my daughter tell me 3 of my 4 primary teachers weren't in class today. They were in training. It's already happened once this week with one of the teachers. I've asked for an accounting of how many times that the teachers are missing the classes because they're in training. I'm not talking about Buck Hill. Buck Hill's a fantastic experience. Teachers get to spend time with kids out of school. Same thing, I've been on the DC trip, been on the Philadelphia trip. It's a fantastic thing. But when teachers are here, they shouldn't be in training. They should be in their classes. That's all I really have to say.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
So I think what I get from you is a communication of, there was an assembly communication you think wasn't timely. So we'll discuss that too as we go on. Teachers missing class for training, we'll discuss that too with the superintendent. We'll get her take on
As
that.
near as I can tell, with 4 primary classes, each grade has, each 7th and 8th grade class has 2 classes in it. They have 4 hours of class that they teach during the day. They're certainly here more than 4 hours a day. It seems as though there's plenty of time for that class for the training outside of when they should be teaching.
And in your sentiment and your feeling about a bad light on Little Compton, I feel that too. Being from here my whole life. And I'm not just talking about this incident, I'm talking about anything, you know. So I feel...
No, we have a farm party coming up in a week from Friday.
Yeah.
Everybody in town's invited. It's the most, I tell, in my work, I tell people about it. I say, you know what, we have this great thing. The Cool Arts have this farm, they have this barn. Everybody brings something, everybody socializes. It's something we do once a year, everybody's invited.
So yeah, I don't like when things, make this put in a bad light. So I just feel that feeling.
I think the premise that was presented that the school, kids in the school and the town are racist is disgusting.
Yeah. So I feel that I don't like to see Little Compton put in a bad light on anything. So we'll discuss more. Anyone else want to speak on public input? Okay. Obviously, you can talk some more when you just raise your hand. So I am going to go into 9-2 Diversity Education at Wilbur Mcmahan. And we're going to hear from Ray Marcotte. We're going to hear from Mary Elizabeth Miller. And these folks, I think, have a resume, right? And you can just let everyone know what you guys do. I don't know if you want to stand up or to face the audience, it would be better. Just a little bit about yourself and what we're doing in these 4 walls about diversity education in here. And we can all have a discussion whether it's appropriate and how we do it and how we implement it. When we should do it, what classes kids should be doing. However you guys got this thing going on, we'd like to know. So go ahead.
Okay, do you want to hear a little bit about me?
Just a little bit, just the good parts.
I'm an older guy, so I have a long history. So worked for the state drug and alcohol abuse prevention, worked in the prison system, worked in juvenile detention, worked in preschool systems, 20 Rhode Island, junior college, did some private work, and kind of an all-around type of guy.
Ray, how long have you been here at Wilbur?
About 5 years now.
How long are you here a week? How many times?
Twice a week.
For how long? All day?
2 days a week, yes.
2 days a week. And you are the chairman of the
The Social Emotional Learning Committee.
SEL. SEL is the acronym.
Yeah.
And so we do have a committee. That was one of Christine's questions that we just answered. I don't know where she went. She's gone.
It's home.
She had to go.
Yep, I'm taking notes.
So that was if there was a committee, we have one. So you can let her know that. Go ahead.
Yeah, because originally the committee was designed for
Anti-bullying.
anti-bullying. And then it evolved. because we said, you're dealing with bullying, what's behind the bullying? So we took a couple of steps back, and if you take a look at society, I didn't know how long I'd be speaking tonight, so I prepared all this stuff, so I'll kind of pick and choose. But current status of society, families, individuals, politics, world powers, high rates of divorce, political indifference, everybody's pulling apart active terrorism and violence. And that's one of the things that really bothers me, the acts of violence that happens in schools and young kids get constant shoot. I can't understand that. Military background, versed in weaponry, to do that is just unbelievable. So in the back of my mind is saying, how can this be dealt with? And one of the things is prevention. So we're talking about diversity, we're talking about problems. How do we get at those? Through education. What's been done a lot nationally and statewide is taking a look at social emotional learning and development. We need to provide learning and experience opportunities to build a solid foundation and serve them in school socially and throughout their lives. It includes academic, social, and emotional learning. We have to be aware of climate, creating that climate in the school. We need to promote trust, caring, compassion, kindness, and so forth. So those are all the underlying things that we've taken a look at. How do we bring those into the school? The importance of social and emotional learning. There's been decades of research and human development. Social, emotional, cognitive development are deeply interconnected. They're related to success in school and in the future, success in the workplace. It allows the community for individuals to contribute meaningful in society. Studies show high-quality preschool and school-based programs focus on social, emotional development, make positive difference with children's academic achievement and behavior. Students learn more in the classroom, are more effective when children and adolescents have skills and competencies to manage emotions, focus their attention, successfully navigate relationships with peers, persist and face difficulty, learn from and apply academic content to solve problems. Students have a sense of belonging and purpose. And one of the things when I'm talking about violence, one of the things that people seek is significance. I want to be heard. I want people to recognize me. I want to be able to express myself. So that in the back of my mind, when we're talking about social emotional learning, how do we bring that highlight to kids? And one of the things is provide a system, educational program, that builds those type of skills. Employees recognize the social and emotional development, along with content and knowledge, are crucial in preparing for future workplace. The quality and depth of student learning is enhanced when students have the opportunity to interact with others in a meaningful connection with subject material. Children with stronger social and emotional competencies are more likely to enter, graduate college, have successful careers, have positive work and family relationships, better mental health, physical health, reduce criminal behavior, and become engaged citizens. So what we're doing here, we have a number of programs, and Mary Elizabeth will address those, and the emphasis on the statewide has been programs, starting in kindergarten, working up to middle school, where kids are exposed to social emotional learning on a regular basis. It's part of the curriculum for the 7th and 8th grades as part of their advisory area, so it doesn't come into the academic areas. For the younger kids, it's during the course of the day. And when we talk about issues, like when it was anti-bullying, we talk about diversity, and these are individual problems. What we've done is to address what comes before, what gives the children more capable to deal with those problems and be more successful in those areas. So that you're providing the backbone for the kids, not just so they can deal with any and every incident that comes across the table. So it's in preparation for the kids to be more successful. The interconnection when these programs are happening is also interconnection. Kids are talking to each other, kids are listening to each other. Teachers are there, teachers are involved, so it's intertwining. It adds to the atmosphere, the whole atmosphere of the school, the culture of the school. So we want to be connected, we want to be listening. We want them to listen to us and to trust us. And this carries forth not only in school, but it goes to the community. This type of attitude has to carry into the community, where the community trusts and feels safe and is able to work together with the school. Because I can tell you, I work part-time, I've worked in many schools. It's unbelievable here, the amount of dedication that teachers show to students, the amount of time they spend in the classroom, beyond classroom time. It's just unbelievable. It's the support of administrators. It's a fine working system, and when something kind of goes awry, the system immediately adapts to the problem. And whether it's in-house or bringing somebody in or collectively meeting, the response is unbelievable.
So Ray, I got just a couple things before
Yes.
Mary Beth speaks. So you're the chairman of the SEL committee, so you are going to embrace new members of your committee, if someone wants to be a member.
Yes.
And I think we have a new member here in Rita
Yes.
Canahan. And the meeting times, whether we have to have meetings, I know they've been meeting in the afternoon,
Yes.
and if they also have to meet at night also, not everyone has to be at both, but, so I want to accommodate everyone on that committee. So I'm hoping you can do that.
We're going to try to work that in. One of the factors is that the staff members work within the contract. The teachers, I'm an individual contract, so it doesn't matter to me, but in the teacher contract, I'm not sure if that would present problems. We have 4 teachers.
Yeah, so they don't have to come at night. I'm talking about 2 meetings. So whoever can meet during the day and whoever can meet at night, we can do that.
You mean the wellness committee versus and the?
No, I'm talking the SEL committee.
Okay.
If some people can't make it during the day, then they can have another meeting at night. And whoever can make that meeting. So we can work on that. Can we work on that? Someone take that? Good. And what we're going to do with that is going to be reported back on the school committee and with the other subcommittees. So every month we'll get a report back on what programming is going on here. So I just wanted to get that with you. So I have a few for you, Mary Elizabeth, when you're ready. When you're ready to talk. Thank you, Ray.
I'm going to start speaking.
What's that?
Do you have a question?
No. You just tell us a little bit about your background.
I've been a school social worker for about 19 years. Before that, I'm a clinical social worker. I have my master's in clinical social work. I've worked in psychiatric hospitals, outpatient settings, private practice, a variety of things before I went into schools and working exclusively with schools and kids and families.
So just to interrupt you real quick, it's the first time Willowbrook has ever had a social worker in the school, ever. And this committee decided to hire her as also a guidance counselor. And everyone that's ever spoken about her says she's an all-star. She's unbelievable. And what she's doing here, and she can go to kids' homes in the summer. So she can do that. She can go right in the house. So really important what she does. And you're recognized by everybody here of what you do, because I'm sure it's easy, right?
Always. This is my second year, and just a few quick things. Rhode Island has social emotional learning standards, just like they have reading and writing and math and all the academic standards. They have adopted, it's called the CASEL, it's an acronym, which includes 5 anchor standards to address social emotional learning. That as part of the initiative, we're responsible for providing those, addressing those standards with all students. And I'm just going to list them quickly. It's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And the 2 curriculums that we use from kindergarten through 8th grade, K to 5 is Open Circle,
6, 7, and 8 is called the Choose Love curriculum. They're aligned with the CASEL with those standards to hit on all of those important pieces. I think it's important to highlight because I think whatever issues come up here at Woodland, you know, this evening there's been a lot of talk about concern around racial diversity and addressing that. But those 5 standards give us an overview to plug in. Bullying has been an issue. There are other things that come up that give us a larger framework. And as Ray said, by building those foundational skills, we can address lots of different issues. The social awareness, I'm just going to read you, the ability to take the perspective of others and empathize with them, including those from diverse backgrounds and cultures, and to understand norms for behavior. So it speaks right to diversity and how we do that. And there are pieces built right into the curriculums to start to address ways we are, even in kindergarten, ways we are alike and different. It doesn't call it, we don't talk about racism using the word racism, but we talk about, we all come from different kinds of families, we all look different, in very benign ways to introduce those topics in a very appropriate developmental way. We have a social emotional learning committee. We talk about things that are coming up. What are we doing? How are we hitting those marks? That's certainly an important ongoing conversation. But I think having the framework and having it a K-8 framework that follows kids as they develop is ultimately what's most important in integrating that so they can use those skills in an important context. Along with the 2 curriculums that we're using, we do other things. Ray teaches Project Alert to 7th and 8th graders, which is a substance abuse prevention program. So again, for those middle school students. There's a Peace Poster Kindness Matters program for kids 11 to 13 that we introduced. That's a voluntary thing. We do small social skills groups as needs arise, as problems come up. Ray and myself, Jamie Sunderland, who's another school psychologist here part-time, our speech language therapist. Kayla Kemper does some social skills groups as well. We're going through, the staff is going through the Youth Restoration Project training, which is more tools for our toolbox. It's a training that I did 2 years ago before I was working in Little Compton, that we brought to Little Compton, that does a lot with conflict resolution, peaceful conflict resolution, teaches how in a quick 5-minute activity to really get to know things about the kids and for them to get to know things about each other. And it's the model that I used when I came last year. I visited every classroom, introduced myself, and did what I call the circle with the kids. So it was a quick way for me to start to get to know them. And I've continued to do that. And I have to say, having worked with this year's 8th graders last year throughout 7th grade, circling with them, doing activities with them, continuing this year, being at Buck Hill, and I think it was Eli talking about, we did circle around the campfire. The kids were fabulous. And we had these are difficult conversations. Difficult conversations for a lot of adults. And it gets also uncomfortable. But to be able to do that in a way that kids are really comfortable and is important in giving them a place for that to happen. So there's a lot built in. And then we certainly have other things. The staff is reading a book called Culturize, which we started back in August. Long before some of these issues came to the surface for some people. And the Push Learning presentation that was done last week, which is another forum to bring more education and information to kids. But even with something like that, which was a great presentation, the added bonus is, Ray and I are already in 7th and 8th grade, and I'm in 6th grade every week with those kids during advisory time, during a time that's built into their schedules. It's not during English or math. And so we have a place to continue that conversation, because while as great as it is to bring somebody in and do a powerful presentation, then what? Right. And having a framework for the then what. And other issues come up that are related or not related, about discrimination, about other things, issues that kids have brought up that we haven't thought about yet. So, again, I think having that overall framework and basis to be teaching them the skills from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade, so they are ready when they move on. And they have some really good problem-solving skills. One thing I will say that I said a lot to the 8th graders in Buck Hill and since we've been back is they show a lot of perseverance, you know, and we talked about that. And with the elements, with relationship, with conflict resolution, you know, and that's an important skill, and that's something they're going to take with them forever. And some of the footstools, the sewing, you know, some of those
3
activities.
days with no technology.
3 days with no technology. But I really believe those are skills and confidence that they've developed that they're going to take with them. And, you know, I talked about, you know, when you're frustrated enough, when you're frustrated writing that paper, like, think about how frustrated you were doing this with our lanterns in the dark, but nobody was allowed to give up. And Mr. Jaleel championed that, and we were all right there with him. There was no, like, oh, this is too hard. And let's bring that back to Wilbur. For whether it's an academic problem or a social problem, that there's no, you know, this is hard. I'm throwing my hands up. So I think it's important. I think we have a lot of good things in place that we're building on to read as different issues arise.
So Maria Luz, let me ask you, I just want to get to Jenna's question. Do we have a system of intervention here?
I believe we do have a system of intervention.
What is it?
It starts with our social emotional learning. There's a time and a place every week where skills are taught and as issues come up, they can be addressed.
So what does that look like during the day? I know you said older kids, it's in their advisory period.
So
and the younger kids, it was just said during the day that Ray said.
So it's
specifically, I guess.
So there's a specific lesson that's taught once a week for every grade level. It depends on the grade. First grade, I know, does it on Tuesday mornings because I join them quite a bit. Kindergarten does it on Friday mornings. So teachers build that into their schedule. 6th grade, we do it on Fridays. And so there is a time carved out specifically for a specific lesson on the social emotional and built off this curriculum. So
it's every week?
It's every week.
Jenna, do you feel that's enough?
Yes and no. So I think that everything that is being built in around interpersonal skills is wonderful. I think that the things that the kids are able to talk about is they're able to talk about a lot of things that I don't think I would have been comfortable talking about with my peers at the same age. But that being said, so far I've heard a lot about interpersonal skills and not a lot about this is what racism is and this is how it's happening. These are the words that are being used. This is what that word is calling back to. When you use the N-word, you're calling back to, you know, people who were forced to kiss the Confederate flag before they were lynched. You know, there's a much bigger structure there, and maybe part of that is also part of our social studies education. Like I said, my background is also in history. So,
so Mary Elizabeth, are we talking about the N-word and racism in these programs that we're having every Friday and all these other days?
Not in the lower grades.
Right. Which we're seeing racial bias in kids at the preschool level, and that includes black kids having notably more negative responses to other black faces. So this isn't just, it's not something that's being consciously taught. It's not, I'm not trying to say like, and you're a racist, and you're a racist, and you're a racist. That's not my goal here. My goal is to point out this is a behavior that's happening, and we need to isolate it and inoculate it in a way that we aren't currently
So my
seeming
goal,
to do so.
so my goal, and the goal of these 5 people here, is programming with racial education, diversity education, and programming in these 4 walls. So what I'm getting from you is we're not having enough racial diversity in the lower grades. Is that what you're telling me?
I think it needs to be, you know, we've had these open circle programs and the Choose Love programs, which I'm familiar with all of the social emotional learning. My son has an IEP that involves social emotional learning goals. So this is something I'm aware of. What I think is not being addressed are these specific differences. A big difference is racism, and it's certainly something that has come to the fore. Following that particular incident, I've also heard from other parents in the younger grades of things that have happened to their children. And so it's not even just intellectually, it happens in these younger grades. I've heard specific instances from younger grades. So waiting until 7th and 8th grade to do push learning is too late.
So let's have that discussion quickly. What's your feelings about having it in the lower grades taught?
I have gone into some of the lower grades and done targeted lessons around inappropriate language, whether it's racist, whether it's homophobic language, I mean, other things that have come up, and around people being aware, kids being aware, perspective taking, not everyone is the same. Have I gone in? I have not gone into my knowledge. Some of the words you're referencing haven't been used.
That particular word, no. Other.
It's a very powerful, strong word.
Yes.
I don't think you need to use that word to teach diversity and tolerance.
I don't think so either, but I think that there is value in calling racism racism. There is a value in calling homophobia homophobia at a very young age. And the way that I talk to my kids about it is, you know, people think that because somebody's skin is a different color that they should not be treated like they're a person worth being treated like a whole person and that they're important. But naming.
And some of that conversation does happen, not even with me, even embedded in some of our ELA curriculum. And I know in 3rd and 4th grade, those things, it's in the engaging in our curriculum. And last year, I was a part of talking with a 4th grade ELA teacher about lessons she was doing around that exact issue. And literature that they were reading that used derogatory language in it, you know, old literature, and why that was in there, and why we don't use that anymore. So that absolutely is embedded. When specific incidents occur, one of the things that I have found is often kids repeat things and they don't even understand what it means.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's part of me going in. I mean, the YouTube videos these kids watch, and Sonia, we pull them up in her office. Let's talk about this. And when you get kids in, I've heard students say something, should I not have said that? And they see the look on my face, and we have a conversation about that.
Okay.
So there's also an education piece of why we don't repeat things we don't know what they mean. You know, I think that's another piece of this, is that some of what's happening, kids aren't intentionally trying. There are times when kids are intentionally trying to be hurtful. There are times when they are not, where they are saying things and repeating things that they've seen, that they've heard, that they don't understand. And we absolutely address that as things come up. I'm going to give you things. There's a burnt chicken nugget YouTube video that kids in the school from very young through or watch it over and over, and that comes up. It's very racist, it's very hurtful. They have no idea, many of these kids, when they repeat this little YouTube thing, what that even means. And that's something that we've addressed in many grade levels, and why we don't say that. So it absolutely, as things come up, I think, you know, we can certainly go back and look. And I think there's a place in social studies, there's a place in ELA, and what reading, and there's a place in Open Circle. I don't think they're all islands by any means. And the ELA teacher is also doing Open Circle and has done a beautiful job weaving some of that together. I'm not in every Open Circle. There's no way for me to be in every Open Circle lesson. It's not designed that way. But I'm a resource. If there's something coming up that they're uncomfortable with, they need support, I'll join. This week I'm joining Open Circle with this grade because I know this issue's coming up, and that's a great way to do it. So it definitely is woven in bits and pieces. It may not always be as in your face as, you know, but it's definitely there.
Mary Elizabeth, how about Jenna's other point? Are we preparing students beyond Little Compton?
We're trying. We're trying. I think we're working on that. I mean, we went the 8th grade up to the Junior Achievement Career Fair in Convention Center in Providence this year, right after we got back from Black Hill, because of so many date changes. And that was with 3,000 middle school students from all over. And they saw kids but with all sorts of diversity. It was a great opportunity when we came back to talk about that. Not only that piece of it, but also they saw all sorts of behavior that they don't see in this building, that they wanted to talk about. And we did a lot about how you dress when you go to that, who you're going to be meeting, what you do, how you speak with these adults. And they were great. And when we came back, they really were ready to talk about what they saw and what that was like. So I think we are, and we continue to look at ways that we can continue to enhance that.
Any other questions from Mary Elizabeth? Sure.
Can I?
Sure.
Mrs. Humley and Mrs. Harlow both are in the trenches with Open Circle. You know, what is your experience over the past couple of years with the types of things kids are getting out of?
I think one of the lessons that Mary Elizabeth brought up is, how we're alike and how we're different. So it's a very age-appropriate conversation.
And you've done it in a couple of grade levels, correct?
I have. So I think that it's very appropriate. It's very, I think we touch on all of those things, but maybe it's not as in your face. It's not those words at first grade level. I don't think it needs to be. If it does, we address it. But I think we do a lot with it here. We do a lot of education. We expose our children to a lot of things.
And it looks a little different at your level.
Right. In my age level, well, 6th grade this year, they like to be heard, and they definitely have developed empathy towards other kids when they speak. They actually are kind of like, oh, I never felt before, but surprised. It's really, it's interesting to see them understand someone else's point of view.
Young lady in the back.
You thought of it.
I was going to add on, I'm also a teacher here, Mrs. Sullivan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But yes, thank you.
Still a young lady.
My son is in the 4th grade, and we get the literature too, the parent home piece that comes usually once a month, if not more, where we've gone to the library, we've gotten some of the books that might be around topic or whatnot. So there's an extension piece at home that I know I've definitely touched into.
So has he's been doing Open Circle for a couple
of years now, yes. Yeah, and he loves to get those papers to the libraries.
And there's an extension piece. Mrs. Corrigan is wonderful. She has a whole section around Open Circle books that teachers can also access for read alouds and for things to build right in.
Anything else from Mary Elizabeth?
I just want to add, if I may, that I reached out to the Anti-Defamation League a few weeks ago, and I outlined everything that we have in place here. And I agree, it doesn't always have to be explicit instruction, in the primary grades. That sort of charged language, you wouldn't use that with little ones. But I went through everything that's in place. Open Circle, Choose Love, Culturize, a shared read, every single teacher and paraprofessional being trained and certified in restorative practices. On and on and on. And I have to say, the education director for the Anti-Defamation League of New England said, I'm so encouraged. I think we're good here, and sent me some resources. I added them to our website and some of the curated content that I put up, the scoopets. And there's always more work to do. This has been an interesting conversation because I've had conversations and email threads with Mr. Coward. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And I also honor everything that's being said by Christine and Jenna. This is an amazing community with so many strengths. The school is a reflection of the community. The school mobilizes very quickly. We recognize we're dealing with children, we're dealing with young adults, we're dealing with impulsivity, and we're moving forward. We have many systems in place. We're leveraging those, adding a few. I think the pushed learning last Thursday, and I take responsibility for the last minute email to some of the parents. I take full responsibility for that. It is a program I brought here. I'm personally connected to it. I think it was a huge success. It was a tad long for our 7th and 8th graders, if I may say. But watching them in rapt attention, listening to young adults some who look like them, some who don't, who mentioned their own mistakes, their own errors, their own humanity, and ways to move forward individually and as a community. I found that incredibly moving, and it was an academic focus. They used data, statistics, they used infographics, history, and I think everything's in place for us to bring our kids where they need to be, not just by 8th grade, where we're launching them to the secondary level, but every day of the 180 days, and transfer that, like the IB program, its mission, transfer all of that beyond the schoolhouse door, beyond Little Compton. And I think we're doing everything right, in spite of being an imperfect community of practice. We are humans, and we're here to learn from each other and learn from our mistakes. We need to model that for our kids, and I keep on saying this, 27 kids are in the 8th grade in the midst of some of these social problems, the racist language and attitudes. All 27 boarded a bus to Buck Hill, all 27 stayed, and all 27 came back. And that's when I knew that our educators had knocked it out of the park, and that their families supported these kids. Next, it's the community piece, and hopefully maybe there'll be a book group at the community center or the public library that many of the parents and adults, I would love to participate as a librarian, by trade. So that's the next piece. But the school piece, I believe, and I have absolute faith and confidence in the staff here, the school piece is succeeding.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jana.
Yeah, I have such great respect for this staff and faculty and the work that they're doing in the SEL program here. But I'm also really aware of what Jenna has said about kids and families in the primary grades. And I think while we need to acknowledge and support what's going on and that it's excellent stuff, I'm very aware that there are no representatives of our families of color in this room tonight. And we need to ask ourselves why that is. And we also need to invite them in. I would really suggest that somebody in the school administration invite the families of color in and just ask them, what is it like for you to be here? We just need to get more information in addition to supporting and acknowledging the very good work that we're doing.
Jenna.
I have one other thing. I think that we also have to appreciate that as I'm a white parent of white children. I can avoid talking about and using the word racism and racist with my kids if I want, and it will not detrimentally affect them. If I had a black or brown child, I cannot avoid that conversation. I cannot avoid it being, in their face. And I think also, Lori and Ms. Corrigan, with your expertise as librarians, there are great books that bring those exact topics to first grade level. They talk about the March of Selma at a first grade level. So there's no reason to not address that, and maybe that's within Open Circle. There's no reason not to address it and call it what it is as we are building all these other skills, because cultural competence is an important social emotional learning skill.
Thanks. I think we've heard, yeah.
Thank you, John.
Peter.
Yes. I'm a firm believer if you're in for a dime, you're in for a dollar. If you recall that saying. I agree, racism against African American people is a horrible thing. People get called horrible things every day. That's not just limited to African American people. It's limited to, not just limited to them. It's Jewish people, it's German people, it's Portuguese people, it's Irish people. So if you're going to address it for one sector of society, address it for everything. And it's not, I can say this as a white person, when black people call white people crackers, that bothers me. And it shouldn't be limited to any one race. That in and of itself is racist. When you're saying one part of society is better than another, that by definition is racist. So if you're going to address one part of this, address it all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Osborne?
Might be going against the tide, but I think if you scream about racism, racism, racism over and over again, and provoke reaction, it's not going to do you any good. All you have to do is look at the political scene today. People are calling each other racist, whether they're racist or not. Black people are even being called racist. Why not teach children about civics and responsibility and civility, and stop harping on racism and racist?
Good questions. I would defer to you for all of those.
People can be racist. Diversity education.
I think when, and it comes back to the social emotional, and I think there are some great books, and that's where we have room to incorporate, continue to incorporate cultural diversity into our school culture. And I think if we're teaching that we treat everyone with respect and kindness, then regardless of their heritage, their skin color, that's another layer. I agree, because we have situations where race isn't a factor, where kids can treat each other pretty horribly, and they need those lessons just as much. So I think it's for everyone.
Anyone else? Okay. So I just want to finish up with Peter. I was going to talk about that assembly, you already just that. He had another point of teachers missing class for training. Can you speak on that?
The restorative practices training. It is done.
Is that what you asked?
Well, I mean, it's...
Or just in general?
I'm very curious to see year-to-date, or school year-to-date, how many classes have teachers missed because of training? Not just restorative justice, but prior to that. Again, I'm not talking about Buckhill, I'm not talking about field trips, I'm talking about actual training.
I thought I heard it right.
Conducted for a time.
Yeah, and unfortunately, in November, the 7th and 8th grade teams was sort of, blown apart because we had Buckhill for 3 days in a row. And then the 4th day, when they came back, that was the JA, the Junior Achievement Insight. And so, and then that Monday was the beginning of restorative practices, 2 hours in the morning for some teachers, 2 hours in the afternoon. And so, like I said to Mr. Coward, the restorative practices was thrown into shock relief because it was the 5th day that some of Peter's daughter's teachers were out of the classroom within 1 week. And so that was unusual because Buckhill was supposed to be in September. The JA trip was booked in August, I believe, if I remember correctly. And it was just, sort of, it just was the tipping point for some of the kids and families. They love their 7th and 8th grade teachers.
Absolutely.
And they're very vocal about that. And so that was last month, and then another training was Monday, another 2 hours in the morning for some staff, 2 hours in the afternoon for other staff. We try to do these on non-school days, on our PD days, but this is training that is in high demand. The teachers are giving it effusive praise, if I'm not mistaken. They love it. And it brings everything in. It's diversity education, it's crisis prevention, it's learning to be an active listener, just all sorts of things. There's one more in January, as I told you, and then the one in March is on a PD day. It's a no-school day, and that is sort of the pinning day where they all get their certifications and so forth. So I acknowledge your concerns, and we'll continue our conversation, but sometimes training has to happen during the day, unfortunately.
So, teachers miss their class because they're sick, right? Or they're training, or they're doing PD. Is training and PD different?
Same thing.
And so, Mr. Coward's asking if there's a report, or if there is a result, or is there something that we can print up, is that something we can do, Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Yeah, and I've actually given him some numbers already.
My suggestion is that you adopt a policy. I know that in another district, I don't know if they're still doing it, they certainly did it when I was on the school committee because we expected it, that if the teacher was out for training, the teacher had to write up a report and also include in the report how it could be delivered back in the school, whether the teacher could do a presentation at a faculty meeting, or the teacher could model it for other teachers. There was an accountability piece.
This training was right on site.
Do it by policy.
Yeah. This training was on site with the trainers here in our building. The teachers did not go off campus.
So I could charge the superintendent with getting that report to you, Mr. Coward.
Right, I'd just be curious to see, let's say we're, 20
It's fair.
weeks into the school year, whatever the number is. We've got 4 classes a day, that's, by my math, that's 320 classes. I think I did that right? Yeah, 3, I'm sorry. Whatever the total number of classes is they should have had year to date, how many classes have actually been used? Because I think it's significantly more than what we're talking about here.
All right, so
That's
we'll
a fair
get that-
request.
We'll get that request.
Could we add to it the number of substitutes that were required to facilitate the training?
Yes, and that was all paid for with federal monies as well. I wrote the Title IV grant for restorative practices and factored in all the subs, and so it didn't cost the district a penny.
John, is this an issue in any of your other districts? Has this come up?
The issue of teachers being out for PD?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
everywhere.
Again, I'll go back to when I was on, my own personal experience when I was on the school committee in Pawtucket in the 90s. And it was a concern of the school committee. It was also, frankly, the concern of the administrators. And at certain points, administrators would be requested to have requests to go to certain PD, and the answer would be no. Likewise, there is an issue of people wanting to come in and, take time away from instruction and to bring across very important social messages. But the fact of the matter is, it's time away from instruction.
It's true.
And that has become an issue. In one of my districts, for example, I have a superintendent who is now saying no, because that superintendent is very concerned about the fact that the test scores were less than desirable.
So we'll have that report. I'm sure the committee will look at it, and we'll have it on our next committee.
Thank you.
On our next agenda, at our next committee meeting. Anyone else on diversity education at Wilbur School? Did you just have your hand up? All right, go ahead.
There's not really at Wilbur School, but just kind of accidentally today I was at a meeting and I was sitting next to Portsmouth High School administrator who was talking about their new committee they're putting together there. It's called the CREST, the Culturally Responsible School Team. And I was like, whoa, like it was just kind of ironic that it was today that I was sitting next to him. They are reading, he has read this book and they are reading it amongst their team. It's called White Fragility. Why is it so hard for white people to talk about racism? He highly recommended it. But while he would not let anyone else on his committee, because boy did I try, he was willing to share any information with us that we would want. They're starting with a small committee, getting larger, and they've written diversity training into their school improvement plan so that it cannot be, not that I think we're planning on shuffling on the rug, but that made it more concrete and more relevant. He had a very interesting, they have not had a specific event, but they also are mostly white, and they see that it's hard for the students of color, and they wanted to be a little proactive about it, so they're kind of beefing it up over there, which was nice. So our kids will be going into that, and I'm sure they would like us to hear what they're doing so that we can bolster our kids. Not that we're not, but we're on the same page and all that. So that was kind of uplifting or whatever, so.
Thank you, Paula. So I can segue right in. Anything else on this issue, on mine too?
I would just like to thank everyone. I am so impressed with this community. We identified that there was an issue with the climate in the school, and we took it, and people have come out and have spoken their piece, and that's the kind of community we have. You can say what you feel. So this is a conducive environment right here, and the school needs to be that way, and we'll make sure that it is. So I respect everyone for what you're doing, and I know we'll address this. Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. So Polly, if I have no objections, I'm going to go to 8-7, the Portsmouth High School Negotiation Subcommittee, and segue from what you said. Attorney Anderson, we had a meeting, subcommittee meeting. Can you give us up to date on what's going on with our negotiation?
Sure. In this, as a result of the discussions of the subcommittee, the fact that it's no secret that our contract with Portsmouth is coming to an end, not this school year, but the following school year. Conversations that I've had with the business manager, and I think there's no, that the committee has to put this out for an RFP. There have been expressions of interest from other school districts, including Tiverton, Westport, as becoming, the high school of choice for students from Little Compton. I think that the school committee has fiduciary duty to consider all those options, because to the extent that Portsmouth or anybody else raises the tuition rate, dollar for dollar, the dollars will be taken out of this building. So if you have, the tuition goes up 10% in Portsmouth, then be prepared for cuts throughout this building. And, the one place that the hardest and the easiest place to cut is in personnel. I'll be very, frank, that's been my experience at schools. I represent 5 districts, and that's where the money is. So this is a big decision for the community. It needs to be done right, and we need to see what other communities like Tiverton and Westport, possibly Middletown, are willing to offer in addition to whatever Portsmouth decides to offer.
Thank you, John. So in June of 2020, that RFP will go out. The subcommittee will be meeting again in January to discuss this. Any questions on that one? Any from the committee? Thanks. If there's no objections, I'm going to start at the top now and go in order. If that's okay with everybody else? 5-2, exploration of next steps, PK through 8th grade, regarding upgrading physical education, health scope, and sequence. Superintendent?
We're on it.
Thank you. Now, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Great, yeah. Ms. Whip, take it away. We have a consultant.
We have our first meeting with the PE teachers to start to strategize exactly how we're going to go through the process. And I have been in conversations with Judy Squires and Karen McAvoy, who are the consultants that were referred to me. I'm expecting the work there to begin in January. And either probably February meeting, realistically, I can give you a better outline of what it will look like. But the meetings will begin on January 9th, so kind of figuring out, I don't know exactly when your next meeting is, so probably February is a better option for me to report back to you.
Questions on that from the committee? Anyone? Thank you. Thank you. Superintendent report, state assessments, 6.1.
Since we last met, the Next Generation Science Assessment results were disembargoed and publicized, and I have to say, even though we were at that 52% meeting and exceeding proficiency rates, We were number 11 in the state in terms of our science achievement. That's grades 5 and grade 8. Number 11 out of 57 districts with reportable results. If a district has 95% or more who are not meeting expectations, that district or that charter school is not reported. So though the proficiency rate, 52% in science may seem underwhelming, in terms of our kids and, where they are, the attainment level, relatively speaking, like I said, we're number 11 out of 57. So it's a good place to start, but boy, there's a lot of work to do. Amy Mclean is the first ever Wilbur McMahon School Science Curriculum Coordinator, and she is mobilizing her science team, the grade 3 and 4 teachers, as well as Marissa Brazil. They will be disaggregating the data. They will be looking for trends. Like I said, it just was out of embargo, and we'll have more to report in the new year on that. I also was asked to talk about the Ela Decline. We had a 6.2 drop in our ELA proficiency rate, the aggregate grades 3 through 8 this year, and it was very concerning. The math proficiency rate pretty much stayed the same, but it was very concerning to see our literacy rate drop, and it was puzzling. So I was asked to, I directed the team to look at the results, and they did, the day that they were out of embargo in October. And the next day, they invited me in to see the results of their root cause analysis meeting. So the broadcast results were released on a Tuesday, and on that day, our new first ever Wilbur McMahon ELA coach coordinator, Gabriella Sullivan, she convened a team, and they used an active listening protocol with the help of a stuffy, our little Wilbur the Eagle, whatever works. Some of you have roots in the elementary level, so I totally get it. They used a root cause analysis protocol, active listening, and they created a safe space for their colleagues, their community of practice, and they brainstormed every single weakness at Wilbur McMahon, instructionally, assessment-wise, school culture, everything. It was a long list. It was humbling. It was authentic and honest. And through that process, they arrived at an action plan. And Gabby, if you have the time, would you like to take us through a bit of the action plan for Wilbur McMahon to raise English language arts achievement among our kids?
Just like Lori just said, I think it's very important for students to reflect on their own learning and their own, what they might have gotten on the assessment or whatnot. This was a day that we brought teachers in, pretty much one at a time, or might have been a two-team, to have a discussion and really look at that, what could be the problems that we are facing and why we might have had such a negative impact on our scores this past testing time. And it was very humbling to hear, get down to the nitty-gritty of, your own personal, what you think you need to do within your own classroom, what needs to be better. One of the people just spoke. It was nice. People felt comfortable and just spoke. We wrote a nice long list. I know that's been shared with you. And one of the big things that came up was our writing. We think that our students are strong leaders, and we think that our writing needs to be improved. It was across the board. It was something that was said among every person that came in. That's also a very challenging topic to work on, because it's, comfort level in your own classrooms and being able to give great teacher feedback and, keep practicing towards something to get better at it is you have all different levels in the classroom when you're working with students. You could, some is developing a sentence and some are developing paragraphs. So, we decided that we thought one of our biggest action items was going to be to work on benchmark, some benchmark writing that we haven't really had. We have some really great reading diagnostics that we can do, but the writing, we need more chances for kids to, or students to do that in our classrooms, and then us to provide them meaningful feedback that they will then write to the feedback. They will try to practice it again through our feedback. So 3 to 4 times a year, having that soft day where no teacher help. And I know they do that in the younger classrooms, a lot with writing continuum, but this would be like more with the released items from some of the state assessments, and the students would have that no teacher help, feel like they're going to do their first, they can do a rough draft or whatnot, but really what they produce and what they pass in, we would provide a lot of teacher feedback, and then they would fix that to the feedback that we provide to them. And some of the classrooms have already started, and I've already been hearing back, from some of them, and just very, very telling, what they've already been seeing without even going over and looking at them yet. Just how meaningful it is. What we talked about that day is really showing with them doing this in the classroom. So we've done it once, we're going to try to do it at least 2 more times this year. That was a big one that we talked about. There's other things we want to do as well, but that one we feel like could really help us. And the students, we see a lot of anxiety too around writing, but I think they need to see the struggle and then go through that process and really understand how far they've come as a learner in whichever classroom. I don't know, should I leave it? I don't know if you have anything else to add, but I feel like this was our big to-do that we wanted to really, it was the one that came across through everybody, and I don't know, I didn't.
If I may, it's never occurred here before. We've never had benchmarking, which, once again, another reckoning. We've never had benchmarking around writing at Woodland Mcmahan
But I will
School.
say it was very powerful to hear everybody say it at the same time and feel like we're all in it at the same time. Like we're all gonna, that is something that helps build support. I feel like my position, I'm able to keep those conversations going, because I'm in a lot of the PLC conversations for grades 3 to 8. So I get to have those conversations weekly. I get to have them if I'm in those classrooms as a support. And when we are going to do this now, I feel like it's just another layer. We're just trying to add those layers. I feel like we've done a lot of great stuff, but there's more that we definitely all can feel on the same level of trying this out and getting that in our classrooms. And I know that even the second grade, first grade, they want this, to trickle down into them. We've heard that came up in a PLC just recently. That Ms. Bull had shared with us. So it's a big conversation that's not just happening in the 3 to 8 world. We want that to expand to the lower, but I think we're going to patch on this, and we're going to see how this goes. And I'm very excited to meet with them in January during PLC times, and if we need that day to have that conversation for feedback. And if teachers don't feel that they know how to address a high writing piece or even a really low writing piece, it's again all of us together supporting each other and really working through that.
Just very quickly explain benchmarking, and maybe you and Cheryl talk about the day that you all got together, the PD piece.
Yes, so we needed the day to honestly prep and prepare for the classroom, and we used release items from state testing. Massachusetts has been doing it a little bit longer than us, so we had some RICAS release results from a few years, but then Massachusetts had the extended, you could go back more years, and it's only a part of the assessment that students would have seen if they had taken that assessment. So there's a reading component, and then there's the writing component. And usually that will address something that they would have seen throughout the school year, where it could be about theme, it could be a narrative, it could be, so it's the gamut. So if we do this 3 to 4 times a year, then they're going to see a span of a different skill, a different genre, different readings, genres as well, and just having more exposure and opportunity. I always say that about for students, you know, they read great books, but when they're exposed to different level text or genres, they're going to, I don't know, learn a little bit more from something that's a smaller scale than reading a whole book. So the PD day was great because teachers felt they could leave with that day to set up for the next. We just did one. There's 2 more that we're going to try to do by certain dates, and they have all those things all ready to go.
We have an action plan.
We have an action plan, and it's ready to go. And we actually are using the test app platform. So, because you can do the reading, so then the students, especially the 3rd and 4th graders who don't get as much exposure to doing this, they only see it when we do state testing. Then they're going on, they're using the tools, it's all there, it's on the practice platform. So the students that did it in 4th grade the other day, you know, we told them no teacher help, and it's like, you know, simulating the actual, you know, experience, and they felt, you know, like they were doing something that was very meaningful and important, obviously, and we told them that we couldn't help them, but we were going to eventually get back to it and let them know, you know, what they can do or how they did. And it really is to show them how you can get better. You're right, you can finish something and put the last period or last punctuation mark and know that there's something more you could have added or just really taken it apart and put, you know, some more effort into that. Or we really want to give the students that opportunity because, like you said, we haven't really done that. And we do it in our everyday curriculum. There's a lot of scaffolding. So basically, I feel like when we get to the finished product, it's really well done because there's so much teacher modeling. And then we have to give them more chances to just try it on their own without, like, we're doing this for 6 weeks and we're going to read this book and we're going to do all these prompts. This is more exposure to just you read a script, you read something, some form of text, and then you're going to answer a prompt. So it's going to be different from their everyday curriculum, but it's going to, all the things we're doing all woven in somehow.
Nice. Any comment on assessment? Ed?
I fail to understand how it is that, given the small class sizes, this need to focus on writing has eluded multiple teachers over multiple grade levels. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know where the critical thinking skills are here, but they seem absent as well.
I could just say, Ed, that I've been yelling about writing for 10 years. Polly?
We have been talking about writing. Our high school students have been filling out those surveys about things that they would change, and they've been asking for years to be treated like they're more grown up and be given more responsibility and to do more writing. That when they get to the high school, the writing is the problem.
And that is exactly what's being implemented. A long time coming.
Any other comments on state assessment? All right, finance report. Ooh, it's the fun one. Finance. Go ahead, finance, man.
Well, we're 5 months into the school year, and right now we are tracking towards a little bit of a surplus. The good news is our revenue is going to be up. We have, 10 tuition-paying students versus a budget of 6. We have 9 less students at Portsmouth High School, which is a $97,000 savings in overall.
Sounds like you're coming to some bad news.
The bad news is coming.
Yep.
Oh, it's there.
You can tell.
We are up on our purchase property services. The maintenance on the HVAC system has been significant, and we're actually facing right now a potential cost to replace the backup boiler in the neighborhood of about $48,000, with probably another additional $20,000 or $25,000 worth of work to kind of upgrade the overall heating system as well.
So if I had a quarter for every time I heard the word boiler, in the 5 years I've been on the school committee,
You could buy a new
Well,
boiler.
My pants would be falling down.
right. No,
So
Okay.
we're finally going to
that might be,
do something with the boiler?
well, we're going to replace it, but we contacted the insurance company because back in 2012, I was able to get them to pay for a boiler. So we do have boiler insurance. The adjuster needs to come in and look at it to make sure there weren't maintenance issues on it. If it clearly wasn't our fault in terms of maintenance issue, it could be covered under our policy. I'm not exactly sure how much, but we would get something in return.
So when does that word come, John?
Well, I know today we had an adjuster show up to look
Yesterday.
at. Yesterday, was it? Yeah, yesterday.
The adjuster came yesterday, and I should have told you, John, you weren't on campus. So the adjuster came yesterday. We had a bit of a, a moment because we had to get rid of the boiler in chunks. We had to get the adjuster here before we scrapped it so that he could look at it and analyze it so that we could collect some money. And so he spent a goodly amount of time yesterday on campus. Yesterday we had 4 techs on site, and they laid everything out, and he did his diagnostics, and I don't know when we'll get those results, but it looks good. It looks good.
I'll be looking for that.
It does look good.
Fruition.
I mean,
This 5-year odyssey at some point.
There are some issues with the boiler in terms of the type of water that's being used in it too, so we have to address that as well too. So hopefully this whole project will deal with that,
Right.
that whole issue.
So
Corrosion.
In 2012, when you got the money for a new boiler, did we buy a new boiler in 2012?
Yeah, we did, but it was I think it was the one that we were using for the hot water. It was 25,000. It wasn't, back then was, I mean, chunk of money, but it's not, it certainly wasn't the 50,000 range, but.
Right.
And that cost us 1,000 in our deductible, that was it.
So how old are the current heating boilers?
Well, these probably were in conjunction with the building
renovations.
project, so they're not very old, which is an issue. So,
We might have to think of water filtration with the 5-year plan, and I got the grant for the, 5-year capital plan, when we get RGB in to take a look. Because now we had a hot water tank below last week too. We replaced that with the stainless steel lifetime guarantee at a third of the price of, but it's definitely the water. It's the pH and the mineral, high mineral
I would
count.
think the town might be interested in helping with that, since don't we supply all the water with the first stop?
We are the VSSD
So we're like the
operators.
filter for the rest of the town, even
yeah,
though we
no,
have the
I've
filter.
had some conversations with them,
Yeah.
I mean, they're well aware of it, so.
Any other questions for the finance man? Thank you. School committee reports. Support for the school committee?
We had a very intense, long meeting last night in Portsmouth over the schedule.
Oh, yeah, you were there for that. Tell me.
Yes,
Do tell.
many parents, teachers, staff, union representatives, everybody's very concerned. And Mr. Amro will be revealing the plan this week.
Wow.
Block schedule, I believe, but yeah, lots of controversy, lots of conversation.
Well, I bet. So they're gonna stay with the block, you think?
I believe so.
That was the overwhelming choice, right?
Yes, because they did survey the community,
They
they
love
used
the
a
plan.
nice, yep, they got all the input, and so we'll see what it comes up with.
Thanks.
Yeah, oh, I learned something too. We call it differently abled now, it's not disabled, the term you use
Yes.
for.
We use that here too.
I did not know that. Differently abled. So, first time I heard it.
All right.
Thank
Town recreation, there's nothing to report from me. Health and wellness?
We're meeting tomorrow, but we have a great result from the box program already. Jenna, do you want to tell people about that?
Sure. At week 3, we had all the participants run 150 feet, and we timed them. And just this week, we started timing them again and comparing the numbers. All of them improved. The minimum improvement was 8%, but we actually had one student that was 56% faster, which is just phenomenal. And the kids have really enjoyed coming in and doing it. We actually had this morning, because of the holiday shop, we had the drop-offs also coming in, and so it became like the box kids and all the other kids, we were having a dance party, and now everybody wants to come, so hopefully we'll also see those numbers go up. But to see that physical improvement and to see how happy and excited the kids are in the morning to get moving in that way has been really rewarding.
It's always good stuff for the wellness committee, huh?
Yeah.
Hard at work.
Showing it.
Policy subcommittee, shall we wait further down?
Sure.
Oasis subcommittee report, Principal Whip.
It's snowy.
Okay, we got snow in the Oasis.
And it
Okay.
is.
School safety subcommittee report, I will report out that you folks are probably seeing the construction in the gym, in the gym and in the office. We're hardening up the entrance, it's happening. So we will have AC in the gym in the summer. So that'll be neat for town financial meeting and other activities. Portsmouth High School, so we already did that one. Discussion items. School cancellation late start. So I forced this on myself, on this agenda. So Superintendent Mitchell, so I'd like to say publicly that we should not have to follow Portsmouth when they cancel school. And I'd also like to say, for our high schoolers that are traveling to Portsmouth, they need to be notified no later than 5:30 in the morning. So I just wanted to get that off my chest publicly. So you can tell me, and I know that there is this little secret society of superintendents on an email or a text, I guess, I don't know what it is. Bristol and Warren and Little Compton, and I mean, I know I could get thrown in jail for this, and in Middletown and Newport, Tiverton, and they all get together and they want to do the same thing, so when it goes bad, they can all go down together, I guess. So I just like you to know that, I don't know if I speak for the whole committee or not, but we would just want our high schoolers to know before 5:30. And, you know, we live in a different town, we have different weather, we have different roads. You know, it may snow more here, or, you know, so, for safety's sake, and I think you've done a great job with it anyway.
I'm gonna get kicked out of the secret society for going roadblocks.
Did you?
No.
So, if you want to talk about your inner workings, that's up to you.
No, I will not.
That's up to you. Any other questions on, yes, Jenna?
It's my understanding that our high schoolers that did not go to school when we were canceled because of the road conditions here received an unexcused absence. And I'm not sure if that's being negotiated at all.
It is, yes.
Because I
have a
think
formal
that's-
request in for non-excused.
That safety factor, I think that needs to be considered.
So, I thought it was excused, I thought they...
It is, so that's,
I had a kid over there, and I asked him, he said, yeah, they excused him.
yeah, they did.
I don't know anybody that was unexcused.
I requested that the day of.
Fantastic, thank you.
Anything else on cancellation? Anybody want to get anything else off the chest on that? No? Okay. Action items. Consider, discuss, and vote to approve the data collection policy, second read, so we will be voting on this one, so get ready, you're voting. Okay. Is it up there? There it is. Ed? Data collection.
Codifies what essentially is present practice. Actually, it's too far away for me to read with any adequacy, but if you'd like me to read it aloud and they can magnify it, I'm happy to.
Wow, look at that. Carolyn couldn't do that. That was pretty good. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Data collection, perfect. Consider, discuss, and vote to approve the facilities use amendment. This is a second read.
This one was to reconcile the overlap between the Recreation Committee and the school on those cases where, so that we don't have any, there's communication between the two.
Is there language on there that's
nothing
changed?
drops. No applications fall through the cracks or
That's
show up
a
that
long
don't
one.
have an application, or Yes.
Okay, so we've added that
Yep,
Principal and...
in the rec department, okay.
Yep.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye, thank you.
It's a great change.
11.3, consider, discuss, and vote on purchasing policy. This is a first read, no vote. Just an explanation, Ed, go ahead.
This was the Rhode Island Department of Education, I believe John said, wanted language for procurement, and John provided this language.
I will read that language, and we'll vote on it on the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay.
11.4, consider, discuss, and vote on home instruction policy amendment. This is a amendment. This is the first read. What did we amend on this? This is interesting, isn't it?
We didn't have any sort of delineation for students who would be partially enrolled. So this outlines those courses for which they would be eligible, the number, et cetera, and also just provides a different timeline for application, et cetera.
Great.
It's a good change.
11.5, consider, discuss, and vote to approve a resolution field trip funding law. I don't see a second read here. There you go.
It's not a policy.
You don't need a second read on it.
Don't need a second read. I do that. I know. Thank you. Bring your money tonight. So Ed, we got highlights.
We have highlights. This didn't actually come out of the policy committee. This was something that was suggested at the last meeting, I believe, by me, just concurring with other resolutions from other school districts that have come across our desks, urging that the General Assembly change present policy to reflect that, we would need to choose one, and I guess that's what the discussion is. So down below here, reading, and I take it this is your draft, John? Oh, all right, thanks, Mariah. So choose one below.
So it's either some fund support to or funding for any. Is that what we're talking about? There's a third option.
There's a third.
Funding for any.
So I'm happy to read, the choices proposed are: this prohibition does not apply to school-sponsored field trips in which parents can be asked for funding as long as the district provides some funds support to students whose family cannot afford the cost of the trip. Or, this prohibition does not apply to school-sponsored field trips in which parents can be asked for funding as long as the district provides funding for any student whose family cannot afford the cost of the trip. Or, this prohibition does not apply to school-sponsored field trips in which parents can be asked for funding as long as the district provides funding for any student whose family cannot afford the cost of curriculum-based field trips required by the Rhode Island Basic Education Plan.
Which one do you like?
Well, I think we already have a program in place where we provide financial assistance to families who can't afford it. So I would be for any student who cannot afford the cost of the trip. I'm one of five.
John, anything you want to add to this?
Your current policy is the second choice.
Yeah.
This prohibition does not apply to school-sponsored field trips in which parents can be asked for funding as long as the district provides funding for any student whose family cannot afford the cost of the trip. And I think that people in Little Compton, again, Little Compton is a very special place. It's my understanding from talking with Principal Whip about this, that no one has ever gotten left behind here in Little Compton, including the Washington trip. Something like that doesn't work in a place like Pawtucket, but in Little Compton, they get the job done. So I would recommend the second option.
You want to make a motion, Ed, for option 2? Is there any other, you want to make that? And we'll have a
I'm
discussion.
happy to move option 2.
I will second that.
On the second page, there's 2 other questions.
There's 2 more? No, I'm gonna go with this one too.
There are two other questions. One is who do we want to send this to?
We'll deal with that later. We'll deal with that later.
Okay.
Yeah. Ed has a motion, I seconded it. Any discussion? Anyone here? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Not seeing any, thank you. 11.6, consider discuss a vote to approve disposal of furnishings. Do a motion for that?
Sure, you have a motion.
A second?
Second.
Discussion, anyone?
Just old chairs.
Old chairs. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Not seeing any. Consider discuss a vote to approve a request for information for administration and/or legal counsel. Anyone? Not seeing any. I'll consider a vote to adjourn.
I so move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes, I am.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, the school committee can't.
I can't adjourn.
You have, the school committee
I
has
have
to
an
vote
executive session
to
over.
go back into executive
Yes, we
session
do.
to discuss negotiations.
So I gotta bring that back?
Yep.
Who made that motion to adjourn?
You did.
Can you retract that, please? And who made the second? All right, that's retracted.
I think I moved.
She seconded.
So I'll take, consider a motion to move into executive session.
Yep, for negotiations.
So I'll let these people leave first, and then we'll do that.